My name is Liam, and if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that family isn't always who you can count on. A year ago, I made a decision that changed everything. I quit my dead-end job and started my own online business. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to grind. I had saved up a little money, done my research, and had a solid plan. My family, on the other hand, thought it was the dumbest thing they had ever heard. I still remember the way they laughed when I told them. We were sitting around the dinner table, and I had just worked up the courage to announce it. My own business? My mom snorted. Liam, you can't even keep your room clean. What makes you think you can run a company? My dad chuckled, shaking his head. You need a real job, son. Something with benefits. Look at your brother. Nathan, he's doing it right. Yes, my older brother Nathan, the golden child. He had a stable job, a nice car, and the undying approval of our parents. Compared to him, I was nothing. Nathan smirked at me from across the table. So what are you selling? Get rich quick schemes. I gritted my teeth. No, I've been learning digital marketing. I'm starting an e-commerce site, and I didn't even get to finish before they all burst into laughter. You? E-commerce. My mom wiped a tear from her eye. Oh, this is rich. You don't even have a business degree, my dad scoffed. You'll be crawling back in a few months, begging for help. That night, I went to bed feeling humiliated, but also more determined than ever. I was going to prove them wrong. The next few months were brutal. I worked insane hours, living off instant noodles and caffeine while pouring everything I had into my business. There were times when I thought they might be right, that maybe I should just give up and get a real job. But every time I doubted myself, I remembered their laughter. That was all the fuel I needed. Then, about a year later, everything changed. One morning, I woke up, checked my sales dashboard, and nearly dropped my coffee. I had just crossed 6 figures in revenue. I had done it. I had built something real. And that's when my family came back into the picture. It started small. A few passive-aggressive comments from my mom like, "Oh, I guess your little project is actually working." Then my dad, suddenly curious about what I was doing. And of course, Nathan, who went from mocking me to suddenly being so supportive of my entrepreneurial spirit. Then came the requests. At first, it was just little things. My mom wanted me to help out with some bills. My dad hinted that his car needed repairs. Nathan joked about how, since you're rich now, you should take your big brother out for a fancy dinner. At first, I brushed it off. I figured they were just testing the waters, seeing if I'd actually hand over money. I had no problem treating them to dinner or helping out with a bill here and there. After all, despite everything, they were still my family. But then, things escalated. Fast. One evening, my mom called me out of the blue. Liam, sweetie, we need to talk. I could already hear the tone in her voice, the same one she used when she was about to guilt trip me into doing something. What's up? I asked. Well, she sighed dramatically. Your father and I have been struggling a bit financially. It's nothing major, but we were thinking, since you're doing so well now, maybe you could help us out. You know, just until we get back on our feet. I frowned. How much are we talking? Oh, not much, she said quickly. Just $20,000. I almost dropped my phone. 20,000? Yes, sweetheart. And it's not like we wouldn't pay you back. You know we always support you. I nearly laughed at the irony. They always supported me? Yeah, right? I hesitated for a second before responding. I don't know, Mom. That's a lot of money. What do you even need it for? There was a long pause. Then she cleared her throat. Well, your father and I were thinking about remodeling the kitchen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't for medical bills. It wasn't for an emergency. They just wanted to upgrade their damn kitchen. Mom, I'm sorry, but that's not something I can just— Liam, she snapped, her voice turning cold. You owe us. We raised you, fed you, gave you a roof over your head. The least you can do is help your family. There it was. The classic guilt trip. I sighed. I appreciate everything you did for me growing up, but that doesn't mean I'm a bank. Before she could respond, I heard my dad in the background. What's taking so long? Tell him we'll take 30 if he's feeling generous. 30. I hung up. That should have been the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. The next day, I got a text from Nathan. Nathan texted, Yo, heard about Mom and Dad. Kinda messed up that you won't help. I replied, they want money for a kitchen remodel. Nathan. Nathan texted, So? There are parents. If I made as much as you, I'd help them in a heartbeat. I responded, Then you give them the money. Nathan texted, I don't have it. I replied, Exactly. He left me on read after that. But the real explosion happened that weekend. I was at home, enjoying a rare day off, when I heard loud knocking at my door. I checked my phone, no texts, no calls. My stomach twisted. I already knew who it was. Sure enough, when I opened the door, there they were. My parents, my brother, and oh, great, my aunt and uncle, who had somehow been dragged into this mess. I barely had time to react before my mom shoved past me and marched into my living room like she owned the place. My dad followed, looking pissed, and Nathan just stood there with his arms crossed like he was about to watch a boxing match. Behind them, my aunt and uncle lingered in the doorway, clearly dragged into this drama for backup. I exhaled sharply. What is this? Mom spun around, her hands on her hips. Liam, we need to have a serious discussion about your selfishness. I pinched the bridge of my nose. You showed up at my house. Unannounced. Dad scoffed. Yeah, because you refused to help your own family. I folded my arms. I offered to help when you actually needed it. But I'm not giving you 30 grand for a damn kitchen. Mom's face turned red. You're being dramatic. Oh, I'm being dramatic? I let out a dry laugh. You're the ones banging on my door demanding money like I owe you something. Nathan finally spoke up. Dude, it's not a big deal. You're making bank now. You could give them the money and not even feel it. I turned to him. Oh, so if it's not a big deal, why don't you take out a loan for them? Nathan shifted uncomfortably. That's different. I shook my head. Of course it is. That's when my uncle decided to chime in. Liam, in our culture, we take care of our family. It's not just about money, it's about respect. I clenched my jaw. Respect? You mean like how they laughed in my face when I told them I was starting a business? How they told me I'd fail? That kind of respect. My mom threw her hands up. Oh my God, Liam, are you seriously still mad about that? We were just joking. And look, you proved us wrong. You should be grateful we motivated you. I stared at her in disbelief. You don't get to mock me, bet against me, then take credit when I succeed. She huffed. So this is how you treat your own mother? After everything we did for you? Dad shook his head. I told you this was a mistake. He's always been selfish. I felt something in me snap. You think I'm selfish? I worked my ass off for a year to build something for myself while you sat there and laughed. Now, because I actually made it, I suddenly owe you. I gestured toward the door. Get out. Mom gasped. Excuse me. You heard me, I said, my voice cold. Get out. For a moment, there was silence. My mom looked genuinely shocked, like it had never occurred to her that I might not just roll over and give them whatever they wanted. Then her face twisted into something ugly. Fine. But don't come crying to us when you realize family is all you have. I scoffed. Funny. You didn't seem to think that when you were laughing at me a year ago. She stormed out, my dad right behind her, muttering something under his breath. Nathan shot me a glare before following. My aunt and uncle lingered awkwardly for a second before shuffling after them. And just like that, they were gone. I closed the door and exhaled, my heart still racing. I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because if there's one thing I've learned about my family, it's that they don't give up that easily. For the next few days, I didn't hear a word from them. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was weird. My family wasn't the type to just drop something like this. If anything, I expected them to double down. But instead, it was radio silence. At first, I thought maybe they'd finally taken the hint. Maybe they'd realized I wasn't going to give in and decided to leave me alone. Maybe I was free. But I should have known better. The peace didn't last long. A week later, I woke up to nearly 20 missed calls from my mom and a flurry of texts from Nathan. My stomach sank. Nathan, bro, you seriously messed up this time. Mom's crying. Dad's furious. You need to fix this. They're saying you took it too far. I stared at my phone, confused. Took what too far? Before I could even reply, my phone started buzzing again. Mom. I let it ring. Then Dad. Ignored. Then Nathan. Ignored. Then, I got a message from my aunt. Aunt Sarah texted, Liam, I don't know what's going on, but your parents are telling everyone you're abandoning them after everything they did for you. They're really upset. Call them. I groaned and threw my phone on the bed. So that's their game now. They couldn't manipulate me, so they were trying to turn the rest of the family against me. Classic. A few hours later, I finally gave in and picked up when Nathan called again. What? I said flatly. Dude, what is wrong with you? He snapped. Be more specific. You insulted Mom and Dad and now they're devastated. I let out a dry laugh. Devastated? Because I wouldn't give them 30 grand for a kitchen? Nathan sighed heavily. You don't get it. It's not about the money. It's about family. You're rubbing your success in their faces and acting like they don't matter. I clenched my jaw. I'm rubbing it in their faces? Nathan, they were the ones who mocked me for starting my business. They told me I was an idiot and that I'd fail. Now that I didn't fail, they suddenly feel entitled to my money. And when I said no, they ran to the whole family to make me look like the bad guy. Nathan was silent for a moment. Look, I get it, he finally said. They were wrong to doubt you. But dude, you're rich now. 30 grand is nothing to you. I shook my head. That's not the point. It's my money. They don't get to insult me and then expect a payout. Nathan exhaled sharply. Whatever, man. Just know everyone's talking about you. Mom and Dad told Grandma, and now she's pissed. Uncle Mike thinks you're greedy. Even Aunt Sarah is saying you're being harsh. I rolled my eyes. Of course they brought Grandma into this. She was the ultimate emotional weapon. Liam, Nathan said, his voice quieter. Just come over and talk to them. If you don't, things are gonna get ugly. I already knew things were ugly, but something told me this was only the beginning. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I was about to walk into the lion's den. When I pulled up to my parents' house, I could already tell this was going to be a disaster. My mom's car was in the driveway, along with Dad's, but there were more cars than usual. Nathan hadn't mentioned this was turning into a family intervention. I knocked once before pushing the door open. The second I stepped inside, I was hit with the heavy scent of Mom's signature vanilla candles, probably lit to make everything feel warm and welcoming. Too bad it didn't work. I walked into the living room and saw them all sitting there. Mom, Dad, Nathan, and Sarah, Uncle Mike, and, of course, Grandma. Mom was the first to speak. Liam, she said, putting on her best heartbroken mother face. We need to talk. I stayed standing. About how you tried to turn the whole family against me? Dad scoffed. Jesus, Liam, cut the attitude. We wouldn't have to tell them anything if you weren't being so damn selfish. I crossed my arms. Right. Because I'm the selfish one here. Grandma shook her head in disappointment. Liam, sweetheart, I don't understand. Your parents gave you everything. And now, when they need you, you refuse to help. I clenched my jaw. Grandma, I did offer to help. I was fine with paying a bill, helping them out if there was an actual emergency. But they don't need help. They want money for a kitchen remodel. And when I said no, they ran to you guys to make me look bad. Mom gasped. That's not true. I turned to her. Oh? Then tell me, Mom, did you or did you not tell Grandma that I was abandoning you? She opened her mouth, then shut it. I smirked. Yeah, that's what I thought. Uncle Mike leaned forward. Liam, this isn't just about the money. It's about principle. Your family supported you your whole life. I let out a sharp laugh. Supported me? When? When they laughed at my business? When they told me to get a real job like Nathan? When they mocked me for taking a risk? Aunt Sarah frowned. Families joke around. Liam, it doesn't mean they don't love you. I turned to Nathan. What about you, Nathan? You think I owe them? He hesitated. I mean, yeah, a little. I stared at him. You're serious? He shifted uncomfortably. Dude, they raised us. They sacrificed for us. It's not crazy to think you'd give back. Giving back is one thing, but this isn't giving back. This is extortion. Dad's face darkened. Watch it, boy. I didn't back down. Or what? You'll cut me out of the family? Newsflash, I was never really in it to begin with. You made that clear when you laughed in my face a year ago. Silence. Mom's lip trembled. Liam, don't say that. You are part of this family. I sighed. Then start acting like it. Family doesn't treat each other like ATMs. Family doesn't manipulate and guilt trip. Family doesn't turn everyone against one person just because they didn't get their way. Nobody said a word. Then Dad let out a sharp breath. You know what? Fine. If you want to be so ungrateful, go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize money can't buy you a family. I stared at him. You've already made it clear that I don't have one. And with that, I turned around and walked out the door. As I got into my car, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because something told me they still weren't done trying to get what they wanted. And next time, they wouldn't be so subtle. I had spent the next few weeks bracing myself for what I knew was coming. My family wasn't the type to let things slide, especially when money was involved. At first, it started off subtly. Some distant cousins began giving me cold shoulders. There were a few awkward replies in the family group chat. But soon enough, it escalated. My grandma stopped responding to my texts. Aunt Sarah, who I thought was somewhat reasonable, unfriended me on Facebook. Then came the email from my dad, the one that made my heart drop. It was CC'd to nearly every relative on both sides of the family. Subject: disowning a disgrace. Liam, your behavior has shown us your true colors. You have made it clear that money matters more to you than family. You have humiliated us, turned your back on the people who raised you, and refused to show an ounce of gratitude for the sacrifices we made. Since you no longer wish to be part of this family, we are making it official. Do not contact us again. I stared at the email for what felt like an eternity. My hands clenched into fists. Unbelievable. This was their final move, the ultimate guilt trip. They wanted to paint me as the villain, as if I had abandoned them, when all I had done was try to build a life of my own. Yet, despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of hurt. I'd held on to the faint hope that, maybe, just maybe, they would come around. That they would understand that my business wasn't just a passing phase, but something I was passionate about. That they'd see I wasn't some failure. But now, this email shattered that illusion completely. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they were about to regret it. I wasn't going to let this slide. If they wanted to paint me as the bad guy, then I was going to tell the full story. So, I spent the next couple of hours writing up the most honest, unapologetic email of my life. Subject: the truth. Since my own parents have decided to blast me to the entire family, I think it's only fair that everyone knows the full story. For those of you who don't know, my parents and brother mocked me when I started my business. They called me a failure, told me to get a real job like Nathan. They laughed when I struggled. Now, 1 year later, that same business is successful, and suddenly, they believe they deserve a cut. They didn't need help with bills. They didn't need money to survive. They wanted $30,000 for a luxury kitchen remodel. When I refused, they ran to everyone they could and painted me as a greedy monster. But let's be clear, this was never about family. This was about control. They don't care about me. They care about what I can give them. And now that I've finally set boundaries, they're throwing a tantrum like spoiled children. If any of you still believe their sob story, that's your choice. But I won't be manipulated, and I won't be guilt-tripped. Mom, Dad, Nathan, I hope your new kitchen is worth it. Goodbye. I hit send and waited. And let me tell you, the fallout was something else. The first call came from Aunt Sarah. She was furious, but not at me. I knew something was off, she said. They made it sound like you just cut them off for no reason. Then Grandma called. Liam, sweetheart, I had no idea they were treating you like that. I'm so sorry. One by one, family members began reaching out. Some were apologizing for believing the lies. Others just wanted to gossip. But the best part? People started to turn against my parents. Uncle Mike, who had always been one of their biggest defenders, sent me a text. He said, I don't blame you. That's insane. Nathan, on the other hand, was furious. He texted, nice job, you just embarrassed Mom and Dad in front of everyone. I responded, they embarrassed themselves. He texted back, you could have just ignored them, but no, you had to be dramatic. You've completely ruined your relationship with them. I stared at his message, a smirk forming on my lips. Ruined my relationship with them? Good. That email was the final nail in the coffin. My parents went on the attack, cutting off all contact with me. No more guilt trips. No more manipulative messages. Nathan, always their golden child, stuck by their side, but by this point, I didn't care. Meanwhile, half the family was on my side. The other half stayed neutral, but one thing became painfully clear. My parents' perfect reputation was shattered. And as for me, I was finally free. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to prove myself. I didn't need to seek their approval or constantly fight for their respect. I didn't need to be their punching bag. I was done. And it felt incredibly good. In the end, I realized I didn't need to sacrifice my happiness or my goals just to keep the peace with a family that only saw me as a means to an end. The emotional weight lifted once I cut ties with them. It was painful at first, but ultimately, it was the best decision I ever made. Now, my business is thriving, and I'm finally living life on my terms. No more guilt, no more manipulation. What do you all think? Did I handle this the right way, or should I have tried a different approach? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Hey everyone, my name is Jake, and I'm 32 years old. I never thought I'd be the type of person to post on here, but after everything that's happened, I need to get this off my chest. Maybe writing it all out will help me process it, or at least give someone else a warning about how manipulative family can be. For most of my adult life, I've been the responsible one in my family. Not by choice, mind you. I was just always the one expected to step up, to help out, to be understanding when things didn't go my way. My parents, Mark and Linda, have always been a little, let's just say, entitled. Growing up, they made it clear that I was the reliable one, the one they could lean on. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Emily, was the golden child. She could do no wrong in their eyes. If she wanted something, she got it. If she made a mistake, they found a way to excuse it. And if I ever dared to complain, I was being jealous or selfish. This dynamic followed us well into adulthood. My parents never outright said Emily was their favorite, but their actions spoke louder than words. While I had to work part-time jobs through college and take out student loans, my parents covered all of Emily's tuition. When I saved up for my first car, they suddenly found money to buy Emily a brand new one for her 18th birthday. Little things like that. It stung, but I told myself that as long as I worked hard, I could be independent. I wouldn't need their favoritism. Then, about 5 years ago, my parents came to me with a request. No, a plea. They were struggling with their mortgage payments and were at risk of losing their home. Now, I knew they weren't great with money, but I had no idea just how deep their financial problems went. They sat me down, looking as pitiful as possible, telling me how they had nowhere else to turn. They guilt-tripped me hard, reminding me of everything they had sacrificed for me growing up. The way they framed it, it wasn't even a question. It was my duty to help them. I was hesitant. I had just started getting my own finances in order. But they pushed and pushed, saying they'd only need help for a little while. That it was just a temporary setback. That they would pay me back when things got better. And like a fool, I gave in. For 5 years, I covered their mortgage. It wasn't easy, but I made it work. I cut back on luxuries, skipped vacations, and focused on making sure they had a roof over their heads. They never once showed any intention of paying me back. But I figured, fine, they're my parents. Maybe this was just my way of giving back. Then, a few months ago, I found out something that made my blood boil. My sister, Emily, was getting married. The wedding itself wasn't surprising. She had been with her fiancé for years, but what did shock me was the gift my parents had for her. Their house. The same house I had been paying off for 5 years. I wasn't even the one they told. I found out through a mutual family friend who casually mentioned it in conversation, assuming I already knew. When I confronted my parents, they had the nerve to act like I was overreacting. "You're doing well for yourself," my mom said, brushing it off. "You don't even need the house." My dad chimed in, "Emily's starting a family now. She needs stability." As if I hadn't spent half a decade ensuring their stability. As if I hadn't put my own financial goals on hold to keep that house from being foreclosed on. And Emily? She had the audacity to smirk and say, "Come on, Jake. Don't be so dramatic. It's just a house. Just a house." I was so angry I couldn't even think straight. I told them I was done. Done being their safety net. Done cleaning up their financial messes. Done letting them walk all over me. I wasn't going to support them anymore. And then I left, ignoring their protests. I thought that was the end of it. I thought they would at least have some shame, some realization that they had gone too far. But no. 2 months later, they came knocking at my door, literally. After handing the house over to Emily, they apparently expected to move in with me. They showed up at my apartment one evening with suitcases in hand, acting like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like I should have been expecting them. "We figured we'd stay here for a while," my dad said, already stepping inside. I was still too stunned to respond when my mom added, "Just until we get back on our feet." I snapped out of it. "You what?" "We don't have the house anymore," my mom said as if I didn't already know. "We thought," "No," I cut her off. "Absolutely not." They looked genuinely shocked. "What do you mean?" "No," my dad asked, as if the concept was foreign to him. "I mean you're not moving in with me. Ever." Their shock turned to anger instantly. "After everything we've done for you," my mom demanded. "Done for me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean, like, letting me pay your mortgage for 5 years just so you could give the house to Emily?" "Jake, you're being ridiculous," Emily suddenly chimed in. I hadn't even realized she was there, standing just outside my door, arms crossed, watching the whole thing unfold. I turned to her. "What are you even doing here?" "I drove them," she said, rolling her eyes. "And honestly, you owe them. They took care of you for years. Now it's your turn." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I owe them," I repeated. "I already paid their mortgage." "What have you done?" Emily scoffed. "I accepted the house because they offered it to me. It's not my fault you're bitter about it." That was it. That was the moment I decided there was no coming back from this. I told them all to leave and slammed the door in their faces. They banged on it for a while, yelling about how I was ungrateful, selfish, cruel. But I didn't care. I was done. A week passed, and I was finally starting to feel like things had settled down. My parents hadn't tried to contact me again, and Emily, thankfully, hadn't sent me any passive-aggressive text about how families should support each other. Then, one evening, I got a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was a cop. I opened the door, trying to stay calm. "Can I help you, officer?" The officer, a man in his mid-40s with a tired expression, gave me a once-over. "Are you Jake, last name?" "Yeah, that's me." He pulled out a notepad and glanced at it. "We received a report from your parents, Mark and Linda, last name. They're claiming that last night, you came to their home. Well, I guess it's your sister's home now, and broke one of the windows. Do you have any idea what this is about?" I almost laughed. Almost. "Wait, you're telling me my parents called the cops on me? For something I didn't even do?" The officer sighed, rubbing his temple like he was already regretting being here. "That's why I'm here to ask. They claim you came by around 11 p.m. and deliberately smashed a window. They've even provided a supposed witness statement from your sister. Unbelievable." I exhaled slowly, forcing myself not to explode. "I haven't been anywhere near that house. In fact, I can prove I was at home the entire night." The officer raised an eyebrow. "You have proof?" I pulled out my phone and opened my security camera app. I had installed cameras outside my apartment door months ago after a neighbor had their package stolen. Lucky for me, the system automatically recorded footage whenever there was movement. I scrolled to the footage from last night and turned the screen toward the officer. "Here," I said, tapping play. The footage showed me arriving home at 7 p.m. and not leaving again. The camera had a clear view of my front door, and no one had come or gone after that. I even had timestamped footage of me stepping out onto my balcony around 11:15 p.m., the exact time they were claiming I was vandalizing the house miles away. The officer watched for a few seconds, then nodded. "All right, that's pretty solid. Do you have any texts or calls from them yesterday?" I scrolled through my messages and showed him the complete lack of communication. No texts, no calls. I didn't even think about them yesterday. I folded my arms. "They're lying." The officer let out a slow breath and closed his notepad. "All right, I figured something wasn't adding up. Your sister said she saw you, but this footage makes that impossible." I scoffed. "Of course she did." He gave me a sympathetic look. "Look, I'll go back and talk to them, but I'll be honest with you. Filing a false police report is a serious offense. If they push this, it could backfire on them." I shrugged. "Their problem, not mine." The officer nodded. "I'll let you know if anything else comes up. Sorry for the trouble." After he left, I sat down and let out a long breath. They had actually tried to frame me, my own family, and they weren't done yet. Because 2 days later, I got another call. And this time, it was worse. I was at work when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I normally ignored those, but something told me to pick up. "Hello, Jake," a professional voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Officer Reynolds from the local department. I was hoping you could come down to the station. It's regarding your parents, Mark and Linda." I frowned. "What's going on?" There was a pause. "It would be better if we discussed it in person." That was never a good sign. I left work early and went straight to the station. When I arrived, Officer Reynolds led me into a small room. He sat across from me, a file in his hands. "We looked into the vandalism report your parents filed against you," he began. I nodded. "And?" He exhaled. "It's not looking good for them." I raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" Officer Reynolds leaned forward. "The window wasn't broken from the outside. It was broken from the inside." I blinked. "What?" He nodded. "We had an officer go back and examine the damage. The glass fell inward, not outward. Meaning whoever broke it was inside the house when it happened." I let that sink in. "You're telling me they broke their own window?" He didn't answer that directly. "What I am saying is that your parents' story doesn't line up. Not only that, but the neighbor's security camera caught something interesting." He pulled out a laptop and turned the screen toward me. It was a grainy video from across the street, angled toward the front of my sister's house. The footage was timestamped at 11:02 p.m. It showed my mother standing by the window. Then, suddenly, she swung something, a bat? A crowbar? It was hard to tell. The glass shattered, and she jumped back. My father appeared a moment later, waving his arms like he was yelling at her. Then they both hurried inside. I stared at the screen. I had no words. Officer Reynolds shut the laptop. Given this footage and the fact that your alibi is airtight, we have enough to charge them with filing a false police report. I ran a hand down my face. Are you seriously telling me my own parents tried to get me arrested over a broken window they destroyed? It looks that way, he said grimly. The question now is, do you want to press charges? I froze. This was it. The moment they had pushed me to. They had thrown everything at me: guilt, manipulation, false police reports. They had stolen from me, used me, and when I finally said no, they tried to ruin me. And now I had the power to turn the tables. I exhaled. What happens if I do? Officer Reynolds clasped his hands together. Filing a false report is a misdemeanor, but because they implicated you in a criminal act, it could be bumped to a more serious charge. They could face fines or even jail time. Jail. For my parents. A part of me hesitated. No matter how awful they had been, this was serious. But another part of me, the part that remembered every manipulation, every time they had made me feel like I was just their personal ATM, felt nothing. I sat there for a moment, letting the weight of my decision settle in. Pressing charges against my own parents? A few years ago, I wouldn't have even entertained the idea. But now, after everything they had done, after they tried to frame me for a crime just because I refused to let them take advantage of me again? No, I wasn't about to let this slide. I looked Officer Reynolds in the eye. I want to press charges. He nodded, like he had expected that answer. All right, I'll start the paperwork. Given the evidence, this should be a straightforward case. Since they knowingly filed a false report against you, and we have video proof, they could be looking at some real consequences. He paused. You sure about this? I let out a slow breath. They made their choice. I'm making mine. Officer Reynolds got to work, and I signed the necessary paperwork. I left the station feeling a strange mixture of emotions: relief, anger, even a bit of sadness. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat anymore. 2 days later, I got a text from Emily. What did you do? I didn't even bother replying. I figured I'd hear from someone else soon enough. And sure enough, that evening, my phone rang. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, my father called. Ignored. Then Emily again. I finally turned my phone off. The next morning, Officer Reynolds called. Your parents have been officially charged. They'll be given a court date soon. We'll keep you updated. I thanked him and hung up, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in. Later that day, there was a knock on my door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Standing outside was Emily. She looked furious. How could you? She hissed, pushing past me into the apartment. They're our parents, Jake. You really called the cops on them. I folded my arms. No, they called the cops on me. I just made sure the truth came out. She scoffed. Oh, come on. So they made a mistake, a mistake? I cut in, my voice rising. Emily, they tried to get me arrested. They made a false report to the police, lied, and even broke their own window just to frame me. That's not a mistake. That's insanity. She crossed her arms, glaring. You could have just let it go. I laughed bitterly. Oh, like I let it go when they made me pay their mortgage for 5 years? Or when they gave our childhood home to you without even telling me? Or when they demanded to move into my home right after? At what point, Emily, do I get to stop letting it go? She faltered, but her stubbornness kicked in. They're facing charges, Jake. Do you know what this could do to them? If they get a record, it could ruin their retirement, their credit, everything. They're our family. I shook my head. No, Emily. Your family. They made it very clear I don't count. I was just the one who was supposed to pay for everything. The only time they even acknowledged me was when they wanted something. She looked away, biting her lip. I could see the gears turning in her head, the conflict bubbling under the surface. She knew I was right, but she was too deep in their favoritism, too invested in the role they had given her, the golden child, to admit it. She sighed dramatically. So that's it? You're just going to ruin their lives over this? No, they ruined their own lives. I'm just not saving them this time. She scoffed, shaking her head. I hope you're happy. With that, she stormed out. I didn't hear from her again for a while, but I did hear from my parents. They were furious. First, it was the texts, long-winded rants about how I was betraying my own family, how they had given me life, how I was ungrateful. Then the voicemails, my mother sobbing, my father shouting, alternating between guilt-tripping and outright threatening me. I ignored them all. A week later, I got an update from Officer Reynolds. Your parents made a deal with the DA, he told me. They admitted to filing the false report in exchange for lesser charges. No jail time, but they'll have to pay fines and court fees. I smirked. How much? He gave me the number. It was a lot, enough that it would hit them hard. But the best part? Since the false report was now officially on record, if they ever tried to pull something like this again, the consequences would be much worse. I thanked him and hung up, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. They had spent years treating me like an ATM, like someone who existed solely to serve them. And when I finally said no, they tried to destroy me. But in the end, they only destroyed themselves. Emily still refused to talk to me. I heard through the grapevine that my parents were struggling to cover the fines and were trying to guilt distant relatives into helping them. But this time, no one was buying their sob story. A few months passed, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. No more guilt-tripping phone calls. No more entitled demands. No more feeling like I owed them something just because we were family. My parents had stopped reaching out, probably because they realized I wasn't going to budge. Emily had gone silent too. At first, I thought it was just her being stubborn, but a part of me suspected that she was secretly ashamed. Ashamed that she had sided with them, ashamed that she had benefited from their favoritism, and maybe even ashamed that deep down, she knew I was right. Then, out of nowhere, she showed up at my door. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. When I opened the door, she stood there with her arms crossed, looking exhausted. "Can we talk?" I sighed. "Depends. Is this another attempt to make me feel bad for not letting our parents walk all over me?" She shook her head. "No, I just, I just wanted to see how you're doing." That caught me off guard. "I'm fine." She hesitated, like she wanted to say more, but didn't know how. Eventually, she sighed. "They're struggling, you know." I laughed dryly. "Yeah, that tends to happen when you commit crimes and get caught." She flinched. "They're still our parents, Jake." I leaned against the doorframe. "Are they?" She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I exhaled, suddenly tired. Parents are supposed to love their kids. Protect them. Support them. Not treat them like a walking paycheck and then throw them under the bus the second they stop giving. "So you tell me, Emily, do you think they've acted like parents?" She looked away. "I don't know." I nodded. "Yeah, that's what I thought." For a moment, we stood there in silence. Then she looked back up at me. "They're selling the house." I raised an eyebrow. "The house they gave you?" She nodded stiffly. "They're broke. They can't afford the fines, and Mom had to quit her job because of the stress. They're asking for help." I snorted. "And let me guess, they expect me to swoop in and fix everything?" She didn't answer, which told me everything. I shook my head. "No." Emily's eyes widened. "Jake, no." I repeated, my voice firm. "They did this to themselves. They chose this. I'm not going to spend another second, or another dime, cleaning up their mess." She exhaled sharply, running a hand through her hair. "I knew you'd say that. Then why did you come?" She hesitated. "Because I thought, maybe, just maybe, you'd still care." I studied her for a long moment. "I do care, Emily. I care about myself. For once in my life, I'm putting myself first. And if you can't understand that, then maybe we really don't have anything left to talk about." She clenched her jaw, then turned on her heel. "Goodbye, Jake." I didn't stop her. I just watched as she walked away. And that was it. That was the last time I saw any of them. A few weeks later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that my parents had officially lost the house. The same house I had spent years paying for. The same house they had handed over to Emily without a second thought. Now it was gone. And the kicker? Emily ended up moving back in with them. She had nowhere else to go. The golden child, the favorite, stuck in a tiny rental with the very people who had ruined their own lives. Me? I thrived. With the weight of my family's expectations off my shoulders, I finally focused on myself. My career flourished. I traveled. I made new friends. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Looking back, I don't regret anything. They had every opportunity to do the right thing, to be better people. They chose greed. They chose to manipulate me. They chose to throw me under the bus when I finally stood up for myself. And in the end, karma did what it does best. So, Reddit, what do you think? Did I go too far? Or did they finally get what they deserved? Let me know.